introduce you all to our amazing speakers. I am so thrilled and blessed and honored that you all would take time out during this holiday weekend to come and talk about what you already do in this community. So I'm just going to say a couple words about each of you and then let you guys kind of introduce yourself and why you're here. Yeah? We're going to keep it real casual, guys. The bar is open. We've said that twice now. Dr. Jania Bryce is a published author, poet, teacher, child advocate, community activist. She has the distinct honor of being proclaimed the first poet laureate of the city of Vallejo, serving from 2015 to 2017. She's also currently a child welfare advocate, attendance liaison, and special projects point person for the VCUSD. She's also the proud president of the Solano County Library Foundation, and she has spent her life advocating for women and children. So thank you, Dr. Bryce. Is there anything you'd like to add?
No, not at this time. That's pretty much me in a nutshell. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Molly Sachs. She's a high school senior, actress, director, and teaching artist at On the Fringe Youth, where she has directed for the last 4 years and won 2 international awards for her youth direction.
Wow.
We have Chantel Ladybug Brumfield, who, Hogan High alum over there. Hey. Hey, Spartan. A youth teacher, youth advocate, community organizer, mentor, money manager, literacy advocate, entrepreneur, and a true arts and culture bearer by traveling to other countries and bringing back their work to better the lives of women in our community. So that's Dr. Bryce would also like you to remember she's on the Solano Library Board as well. Don't forget that one. Up next, we have Victoria Grace Barksdale, who most of you know as another Vallejo kid, youth coordinator, youth advocate, community organizer, mentor, and I believe we've seen her volunteer at maybe every Vallejo event this year. So we thank you, Victoria.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Gretchen Zimmerman, who is a fellow Oddfellow, a journalist who covers arts and culture for the Vallejo Sun. She's volunteered extensively with the Vallejo arts community, working with the Hub, Vallejo Art Walk, and a founding member of the Vallejo Open Studios. She launched the Vallejo Arts and Entertainment website in 2014, and that's where you should look for any arts and culture events in this city. Thank you, Gretchen. Next up is Ms. Jerianne Guzman, activist, public speaker, community organizer, LGBTQIA advocate, co-founder of the Serenity Center, and just basic all-around advocate. If there is somebody disenfranchised in this community, Ms. Jerianne is there saying, not today. So we thank her for being here as well.
Maria, I'm also a Hogan High alum from 1979.
Hey, Spartans, if there's any surviving ones in the room, shout out. Oh, wow, I didn't know so many. We learn something new every day. So we want to thank you guys for your work. We're going to ask you each one of you to elaborate a little bit more. We know that each one of you work with DEIA, which is diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in your day-to-day. So we'd like to just ask you guys to maybe give us a little view on what you do and how this affects your work. Do we have a first victim? Volunteer. Do we have a first volunteer? Victoria's looking, oh, Chantel, in for the save, please. Go ahead, Chantel.
Let's see, to start the conversation of saying, I think we all, based on the introduction, know that I am Vallejo native. I am a product of public schools, but I am also a product of special programs that are outside curriculums that landed me in programs such as being at UC Davis and UC Berkeley and many college campuses while still in high school. What that did for my journey, it opened up many doors. I attended Stanford University, I went to Howard University, and I became a scientist, one of the 1% that landed in NIH, National Institute of Health, who notably does all the research for this country. But it was there that I really realized that once I was in a position to begin to start giving back, that I must do so in a way that was most effective for those who look like me. And I wanted to inspire more young people to go into science and not what we're seeing now is just STEAM or STEM, and literally looking at the fact that this world is moved and shaped by people who are able to innovate in their thought and really have opportunities to have the space, time, and energy available to do so. So in my work today, I obviously run, I am an entrepreneur, I run businesses, but I have a nonprofit called Believe in What You Dream. Because it's apparent that while everyone will tell you to go follow your dreams, you must start believing them first before you begin to start taking action and moving in a way where you are able to better process your feelings about the things that you're getting ready to do, because sometimes you may be the only one in the room and you have to be okay with that. And move on in a space where you can manage your emotions, where you're not rattled, in the space where you have the opportunity to show up and be the voice, to be the one in the room that can be the voice for the voiceless, can walk for those who can't, who can get a word across and articulate it in a way that maybe it's not heard in another space, and ultimately build the right relationships that are responsible and needed for all of it to work together. So in my work today, that's what I help young people do. My goal is to really help them, what I say, discover their superpower, and that superpower being the thing that pushes them forth to make their thoughts take action into a reality.
Victoria, would you like to follow up?
Sure. So for me, I think really working with diversity, equity, and inclusion, it started while I was a lot younger and working for the school district. Part of it was understanding that our culture and our population here is so diverse that you have to really look at all of the different levels in order to help people. And so part of what I think was so beautiful about the job that I was able to do when I was at schools, which was hooking up my students and my families with different resources, different enrichment activities, was that we can feed on so many of the amazing programs that we have here in Vallejo. There are so many cultural, really active groups here that represent the beauty that Vallejo is, this rich, diverse community. And so bringing those and making sure that our students and our families could access those was a huge, huge deal. For example, we brought, Believe in What You Dream to our middle schoolers, and so they were able to get those lessons, get those opportunities at a young age, and get those lessons that would stick with them to the point where they would also be teaching people. Fast forward to now, when my role with the City of Vallejo, I think it's still important to recognize all of the diverse resources that we have here in our community when we're making systems for people to access. And so I think my biggest challenge is figuring out how to navigate systems that weren't always designed with people that look like us in mind, but how do we move forward and how do we rectify some situations? How do we build programs up with people in mind, with women in mind, with diversity in mind? And so I'm happy to be able to be in a position of power within the city organization to start designing with belonging in mind.
Wonderful. Anybody else who would like to kind of let us know what you're currently working on in your part of the community? Ms. Jerry Ann?
I started my activism very young here. I was the youngest member of FELAD, which my dad belonged to back in the day. It was the Federation of Employed Latin American Descendants. We worked with Cesar Chavez on the great boycotts. We moved forward from that into, I sit on 5 boards now within the city and up as far as Santa Rosa, Serenity being one of them. And Serenity was started because back in 2010, there were no services for people like me, people that are transgender in Solano County. I had to go all the way to San Francisco to find services, medical, psychological, etc. So we started Serenity Center, and in the midst of doing that, I got to meet my brother, Mario Salcedo, and he brought me into Solano AIDS Coalition, which they work hand in hand together. We teach about STIs, HIV, AIDS. We advocate throughout the area. I've been lucky enough to be recognized to teach 4 times a year at Torrey University to medical professionals in there, and I touch on HIV, AIDS, and the LGBT. For a while there, they were bringing in actors as transgender people. I helped stem that and bring in actual patients. This community, I sit on the board as well of 7 Generations Intertribal Council. We are on indigenous lands that have never been ceded to the United States. So we have to recognize their place here. My people are from Mexico, from Michoacan. We're the Puerto Indigenous rights have been a very big thing lately, and we're trying to help the city of Vallejo, Solano County, understand that. So there are a lot of ways that I work with all these different organizations. I work with another organization in Santa Rosa that brings language back to the Tongva people of Southern California. Language, stories, music, canoe building, to try to bring their history back. Our people here have a rich history. I was born here in 1960. I've seen a lot of things change, some for good, some for bad. My family's been here since 1939. So, trying to get things to move and trying to get things to change in Vallejo for the LGBT, for the indigenous, for the Hispanic, for those that are downtrodden with HIV, AIDS, or other types of things. Those are my focuses. And also now I've been blessed to be able to sit on a museum board to try to help put my voice in to something that will last a lot longer than I will. So those are my projects.
Anyone else like to comment before we move on to the next question? Gretchen, go ahead.
Yeah, I finally figured out what to say. When I started volunteering with the arts, the reason I launched Vallejo Arts and Entertainment was that nobody was covering everything that was going on. And even though we had the Vallejo Visitors Bureau that's funded by the hotel tax, at that time, they would only post events by their members, people who paid an annual fee. And so when I came in to fill the gap, I maybe wasn't thinking of it in this context, but I covered the Poetry by the Bay shows, and I cover the hip hop stuff, and I try to include as much as possible about what's going on in Vallejo from all different groups of people, all different kinds of arts, big things, small things, whether it's, free yoga class somewhere, or, so of course I put the Empress events in, but I made that kind of forced the Visit Vallejo people to change what they were doing. But they still don't have all the little open mics and things like, Save Los Amigos Taqueria and things like that. that led me kind of serendipitously. I took a journalism class during COVID, and the Vallejo Sun wanted to branch out and cover the real Vallejo, and I ended up writing for them, kind of this surprise second thing, but it's still trying to make sure that we're inclusive and cover things that don't make, bypass the Times Herald's attention. As an independent paper, I feel like that's our job, is to really make sure we're looking at the broad picture and at everybody, and not just with the Chamber of Commerce and all the routine, regurgitated press releases. I'm not, and there's some good, I'm not putting down, there's some good writing in the Times Herald too, but there, just like all papers, their staff is being cut, and there's a lot of challenges. So a lot of the job at the Sun is to try to fill that gap. So that's kind of what I'm working on now. We're bringing in some new writers, some more diverse writers that are helping me cover the events, and that's going to free me up to do more investigative work too now. So that's what I'm working on.
Go ahead, Dr. Rice.
Okay. So again, thank you all for coming. We'd be looking silly on this panel if nobody were here. So I just, in a nutshell, when Maria invited me, and I was just, yes, when? I'll be here. Because to me, the point of tonight is really twofold. One, it's honesty. And it is simply acknowledging that barriers exist that exclude some people from resources and opportunities. If we're honest, we need to start there. But not just honesty, but it's about bravery. Being brave enough to acknowledge it and do something about it. And it's not so much that everyone gets a microphone or everyone is on a panel, but it is lighting up the corner where you are, using your voice to first advocate for yourself and then other people who may feel marginalized or may feel that their voice is not being heard. So tonight is our sort of foray of being honest that some people are being left out and left behind. And if we notice that, if we acknowledge that, then it is incumbent upon us to do something about it. So.
Yes, thank you. Molly, would you like to say something?
No, I can't be the only one who can't sing.
Yeah, exactly. Right, also, don't be the only one.
I started on the Fringe when I was like 9, 10 as the youth ambassador, and now I'm president of the board. I'm 18 now. It's been quite a while. Currently doing Fun Home, which is kind of a biopic about Alison Bechdel, who made the Bechdel test, if anybody knows what that is.
Raise your hand if you know what the Bechdel test is. Okay, there's too many that don't. So Alison Bechdel, who is a graphic novelist and advocate for all kinds of rights, said that if you're watching something, if you're watching a TV show, a movie, or a piece of cinema or theater, and two women are on screen, if they're talking about something that does not boil down to a problem with a man, or how a man is, then it passed the Bechdel test. Unfortunately, at that time, 90% of everything did not pass the Bechdel test. So that's who she's talking about. Go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, the musical is based off her graphic novel about her life. And it's really good. Not only is it a story, about a woman, but a gay woman at that. And those are stories that I don't really think are being told. And I think it's important that we're doing things like that. And we're doing it here.
Just FYI, she's gonna plug the show, you guys. Come in a couple weeks, okay? Yeah, so you guys are all obviously change makers in your own right, and one common thread that we hear when some of you and most women talk about change is there's always some sort of barrier. There's always some sort of challenge, right? Which is what causes change. I think we can all agree, right? Necessity is the mother of invention. So what happened, what barrier, what instance, what thing happened that made you go, not on Beyonce's internet? Do you know what I mean? Like, what was that moment for each one of you where you were like, I'm gonna do something different, I'm gonna change it to make it better for the person behind me?
So if I hear you correctly, I do a lot of storytelling in my work, and we're always looking for the inciting event that caused the thing to happen. And there's been quite a few personally experienced and also observed. And I like to live in this space because I observed. And because I observed blank, I pushed myself to do something different. So for me, coming back to Vallejo, we just skip all the way back to when I came back. The number one thing that I saw in Vallejo that I wasn't, because I observed and I was not happy with, is the state of our education system. It's really bad. And it sucks because here I am, I can be a really great story for the city of how public education worked out well. And then looking at the fact that now I'm looking at things, and because we have to deal with the facts, the education system hasn't been changed in over 30 years. We are now in the space where there's been more innovative thought that has opened up new careers, new experiences. I mean, even to Gretchen's point, she even created like her own job title for something that was missing. And really that's what business is finding the gap and providing a solution and creating a business for it that generates the revenue, makes an impact, and everyone's happy. And so when looking at the school district and just looking at our numbers alone, and if I'm just looking at my own personal journey of being a Black student in California, currently there are 300,000 Black students in California. Less than 15% of them are heading towards college because they're not at grade level reading, math is low, and they can't comprehend the things that are happening. Same is true on the other side when we look at Latinx. The numbers quadruple in number because we're looking at 300,000 versus 3.5 million. Same thing, same category. And so then it becomes a thing to, I think what we're all stating is that we have to look at, so what's the journey of the individual? Because if we're dealing with ELA being a challenge, then we're looking at the school district who's not hiring enough Spanish-speaking educators or counselors. That's one challenge. We're looking at not enough teachers who are diverse. And when we talk about diverse, equity, inclusion, accessibility, that's all a generated, trendy word of just saying, well, how do we all fit in? We're not cookie cutter. We don't all learn the same way. We don't learn on the same level. There's 7 levels of learning. And so if educators are still dealing in a system that's 30 years old and still approaching it in the same way with now the revolutionizing day-to-day realities of technology and the internet, then where does that leave us? Well, in Vallejo, it's looking like it leaves us with chaos. And to a point where before they can get on their journey of learning, they need programs and careers like yours and programs like mine and things to be able to be creative, literary, education points for them to be able to read and find themselves in the story. And so when you look at the work, what's the exciting event? Like, we are at war right now, literally. And people keep on looking to throw money as if it's gonna resolve. No, we need presence. We need the emotional connection and find out, okay, what's actually going on that's preventing you from finding yourself in a space where you believe that you can get here? And so my inciting event is, I'm from Vallejo. I've observed problems, and I can't just sit back and watch. And I encourage you all to not sit back and watch. And you don't have to be the one to be the voice. Just be present. If you know there's something going on, which we all do, and if you don't want to look at what's going on, look at the numbers. everyone always goes back to the numbers. We don't know our numbers, then, we're not living. But the numbers are the numbers, the realities are reality, and it is our human responsibility to step up and do something. That's period.
Yeah, so for me, I can distinctively remember two kind of activating events that got me into hitting the ground running with inclusion, with diversity, equity. My first was being from Vallejo. You grow up and there's actually diversity everywhere. Me, myself, I'm mixed. I'm Chinese, Black, and Filipino, so my family is very diverse. That's the reality for me. It's so much so here that I didn't even realize until I went to college that it's not like this everywhere. It didn't even occur to me. You watch TV sometimes and this and that, but to see how different it is a lot of other places very close to Vallejo. So one, going away to college and realizing that sometimes you may be in a room that you're the only one that looks like you. You may be in a space where you're the only woman. So that, number one, got me to Chantel's point, is you observe. You start looking at things a little bit differently. My second point that I want to share is later on when I started working a lot with youth, and I realized that was where my passion lied, in lifting up youth voices, creating spaces for them. I had I think it was a Bernie Sanders rally. And I decided to go. It was at the waterfront, and I just started working for a middle school, Franklin Middle School. And some of my students were asking me oh, are you going to that? They didn't really follow politics. They weren't really aware of, the political atmosphere here in Vallejo or what Bernie stood for, anything like that. But they wanted to go. So I'm like, all right, ask your parents, that's fine. They came with me, and I immediately saw a light go off in their head when they saw so many people organized for change. They started to kind of stand up straighter. I heard people in the crowd talking about them oh, youth are here, look at that. Look at them being involved, look at them being, responsible. And they just stood up a little straighter and were yes, we are youth here. We belong here. After that, they're doing a little bit more research, they're getting really involved. We went to go eat at Napoli's Pizza, and they were all in drumline at the time, and they're drumming just randomly on the table. And another couple came up, and they're you guys sound really great. Are you guys in drumline, and this and that, just feeding into them. And again, I saw them light up, stand up straighter. They're yeah, we are in drumline. We do go to Franklin. We are doing a lot. And so I just saw the value in making sure that people felt like they belonged in that space, that people felt like they were wanted and valued being in certain spaces. And so for me, that immediately was okay, if I'm going to be volunteering somewhere, I'm bringing youth with me. I'm opening that door, and I'm going to create this space where we all are valued and we all belong. So that kind of sticks with me now, is making sure that people feel welcome and belonged in certain spaces, and then share that with the next generation.
Ms. Jerry Ann is making eye contact with me.
I was at that rally.
I think most of the table was. We had even young, tiny people at the time there, yeah.
I had a couple of aha moments that led me into what I'm doing. When I started transition back in 2010, I was lost. I had no idea what was going on. I went to San Francisco, spoke to a doctor. He immediately gave me a therapist that was there. At the time, I'm 51 years old, 49, 51 in there. And she was all of 26. She did not miss a beat with calling me by proper pronouns at the time, by addressing me the way that I wished to be addressed, etc. And that impressed me. After a couple of years, she moved on and I had to find a new therapy and ended up over at Rainbow Community Center, which is a very good center. But they divide the LGBT. They divide us up into gay men with AIDS, lesbians, transgender, youth. They break it all down so many hours per day. And I saw that. I saw what that was doing to the LGBT at the time. And when I started Serenity, since we had no services here, I vowed that it would be all-inclusive. You know, we would work with everybody at all times. Whether you're a gay man, or you're a lesbian, whether you're a youth, a teen, whatever, because we're stronger together. And watching the youth that I've been able to interact with over the years, they have impressed me. They are smarter. They are more educated than I ever was at their age, that's for sure. I'm a product of Vallejo schools. Like I said, I graduated Hogan in 1979, and from what I see, almost 50 years now, nothing's changed in these schools. My generation was left behind without technology. We were the last classes that did calculators and electronic typewriters. We missed the cutoff in '82 for all of a sudden they're going into computers. These kids now have that wherewithal. We need to tap that. We need to let these kids know that, hey, there can be change. Vallejo needs that uprising of change. We've become complacent. I've seen it. I've seen it with Mare Island when we purchased it. I used to work on Mare Island. I was a Naval accountant. My dad was a nuclear supervisor. My mom worked in the supply, and on and on and on. When I learned that the city of Vallejo, when they purchased it, didn't purchase the utility rights to it, and it went to the city of Pittsburgh, because the city of Vallejo wasn't educated enough to know that, hey, you got to bid on those separately. I started watching government. Started watching what was going on, doing what these other ladies have been doing, watching this city, watching the world around us, and seeing that we're getting left behind. We can't afford that. We can't afford that for our next 7 generations to be left behind, so we need to fight for it. We need to be their voices and teach them how to gain their voice. That's what Serenity does. Serenity is an advocacy and education organization. That's my main focus with that. It's not just LGBT, it's let everybody know you have a voice. You know, correction and the arts and entertainment. Now I remember we had 2 or 3 different Vallejo papers going at the same time when the Vallejo Times-Herald split up originally. We need these voices. We need your voices. We need you to come to our events. We need you to come back and back us up or give us new routes. That's what this is about tonight. Because if we can empower you, you can empower those around you. That's what I'm here for.
Anybody else like to share? Well, I know I promised Dr. Bryce I would say what got me involved in advocacy, and that is I am first-generation American. I am a daughter of an immigrant who was a political refugee during the Nicaraguan Revolution, and when things got really dicey down there, she came here. So it has never been an option to stay quiet. I mean,
Yes.
Chantel's known me for over 26 years. She might be sarcastic. And it was just, you see things, and when your mother or you, for example, you show up to kindergarten and you get sent home because you're speaking gibberish, but you're actually bilingual, it starts to make you want to make changes and maybe go into classrooms and speak your Spanglish to your students who appreciate it. Or, you go to Kaiser X amount of times and are denied health care and are told that, you're a very young woman. Or, Hispanic women tend to. And a lot of other things. There's so many, I think it's just living in this space, in this moment. If you look around, you will see a problem. I think everybody in this room has had a day where they looked in every direction and all they saw was a problem, right? Everybody's had one of those days. You wake up, you look around, and it's like, oh gosh, not another problem. And I think that's how advocacy starts. You're like, oh, this is another problem for me. How can I stop this problem from happening? And hopefully, can I fix it so the person behind me doesn't have to deal with it? And so when you're kind of born into a political atmosphere, you don't really get a chance to say, oh, I'm just going to be quiet about that issue. Not when that means that your cousins get deported or when your DACA relatives get their rights rescinded. Right now, we have a national tour of Hadestown where the lead is Orpheus, has to step down because his DACA paperwork has been rescinded because of new government laws, and he's been here since age 2. So when you see things like that, you have to say something. If somebody gives you a microphone, if somebody invites you to a table, you have to say something. I think if you're invited to the table and you realize there's no more room, well, my goodness, you can sit on my lap or we'll build a bigger table, right? So that's why I do what I do. And I promised Dr. Bryce I would say that. So. So Dr. Bryce has been really, really quiet, which is really weird. And so we're gonna ask her to maybe speak a little bit about why the work she does specifically with literacy and with the Solano County Library Foundation is so integral, because we're hearing a lot of the gaps with youth. A lot of us have taken point on reaching out to children to make sure as they get older, this 3rd grade reading level that we all just noticed for all of us on the library board, we found out that Solano County's average reading level is that of 3rd grade.
3rd grade. Which just so happens to be also, based on statistics, the driver of saying that's when the kids are going to drop out, which is no longer 12th grade, it's 9th grade. Yeah.
Because as all of us in the literacy game knows, K through 2 is learning to read, 3 and on is reading to learn. So if you miss that boat on learning to read, you miss that boat. So that's why there's important literacy programs for adult women and other things that we would love to hear Dr. Bryce talk about.
Okay, thank you. So I wear a few hats, but first I want to just sort of go back a little bit. My impetus or motivation for advocacy and just speaking up came early and naturally. There were 5 of us, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, and my mother was adamant about literacy. There was no question as to whether or not you were going to school. There was no question about homework. There was no question about if I'm coming to the PTA. My household was one that believed, and if I'm just going to talk about me, God is highly praised, education is highly prized. That's me. That was my home. So since that is the case, certain things were taken for granted. You will succeed. You will be successful. You will excel. I'm here to help you, but you have all the tools you need. So growing up in a household like that, with siblings like that, and cousins like that, it was easy to, one, assume everybody was raised that way. Rude awakening. Rude awakening. I grew up in Vallejo. I matriculated through the elementary schools and Franklin Junior High School, and I started off at Vallejo High, a year and a half, and then I graduated from Hogan, Spartans 88. Okay. But I had phenomenal teachers. I had wide open opportunities. I had teachers who say, there's a speech contest, there's a poetry contest, I want you in it. I want you to be in the journalism. I want you to do that. I was outstanding English student in the 9th grade at Franklin. I was this, most likely to succeed. But to me, it was par for the course. Since I'm just talking about me. Somebody expected it. And that is what drives me crazy now, because it seems like no one is expecting the younger generation to do anything more than they are doing. Bothers me. Which is why I went into teaching. Got my BA in Liberal Studies, English Literature. MA in Theology, Doctor of Theology. I decided I was going to be educated because I wanted my children to be educated. I have 2 grown children, 2 going on 3 grandbabies. He'll be here in June. You want to talk about my grandchildren? No. But I said education is not up for discussion. It is not. Because it's entirely personal. African Americans were enslaved in this country. There were anti-literacy laws that made it illegal to read, to look at a book, let alone crack it open. But that's why I determined not only will I read books, but I'll write my own. I have 2 and they're available on Amazon. Okay. But what's the point, Dr. Bryce, really? Why are you sort of rambling? Because when I went into teaching, I decided that I would concentrate on K through 3. I first decided, okay, I'll get the BA, but then I wanted, okay, maybe kindergarten is too late. Preschool. So I went and got some units to teach preschool. And my 4-year-olds were reading. But still they were reading. Right? Sight words are important. So that's just a little bit of... When I started my teaching career in Oakland, yes, Oakland, then I decided I was going to follow my children. We moved back to Vallejo, my beloved Vallejo, and I followed my children, so I substituted in the schools that they were growing up in, matriculating in. Took me to American Canyon, not just Vallejo City Unified School District, but North Hill School, and then American Canyon, and I was determined education was going to be important to me, so the assumption was that it would be important to my children. Well, when my son decided he didn't want to go to college, I almost melted into a whole puddle. I really, you could have swept me up, but college is not for everybody.
That's true.
It is not. It is not. So, moving past that, my disappointment, and he's doing fine now. So I just want to tell you. Okay. But I came back here. I decided to come out of the classroom and look behind the scenes. So there was a job opening for what is called an attendance liaison. Because after COVID, what happened was school districts discovered we lost a slew of children. We lost them, just lost track.
25%.
I said, wait, how do you lose a kid, a whole kid? What do you mean? Children were not tapping in. Not everybody had access to computers. I said not everybody had access to computers. That's the whole thing, access. So as a result of that, 4 years ago, I decided, okay, we moved to Fairfield. I said, okay, what is an attendance liaison? So I applied, I got the job description, everything. So in a nutshell, it's trying to get the children back that we lost. Well, you know, there's learning loss over the summer. So can you imagine over 4 years? It has been an awful experience. I have cried most days. Because when COVID hit, a child was in 2nd grade. By the time they come back, that's 4th grade. But essentially 2nd grade. We've lost learning over years. So my job now, after being in Fairfield for 3 years, I am now back in Vallejo City Unified School District, child welfare advocate, attendance liaison, and special projects. One of my special projects, and I don't mind telling you, is Lincoln Elementary School. I love those kids, but the need is great. Would we agree? That's Sonoma Boulevard? Come on, the need is great. So, trying to answer Maria's question, Why do you do what you do? Why are you so passionate about what you're passionate about? Because I'm a mother, a grandmother, a teacher, and I advocate for children. If we don't, who will? The thought that these children are not reading, meaning one day they won't be able to write correctly, speak correctly. There won't be opportunities that they can take advantage of because, as Booker T. Washington said, if you can't read, it's going to be difficult to realize dreams. Why dream if you can't act on them? Why? I was in a theater, and I'll close with this. And we had gone to see Michael Jackson on Broadway.
It's so good.
It was so good. I'm telling you, the guy who played it was just awesome. Okay. But I yes, don't get me started. The arts, I understand. So we were going, during the intermission, I'm going to the restaurant. Well, I don't know how old the young girl was, but she looked to be between 10 and 12. She was standing outside the bathroom, and someone, an adult with her, had to say, women. I almost shriveled up again because she could not read women. She didn't know that this was do you understand what I'm saying? I couldn't have a whole meltdown and sweep me up at the theater. Couldn't do that. But it continues to light the flame. Somebody has got to do something. So one of the things we do at the Solano County Library Foundation, for which I am the proud president, I see Robbie here, and yes, and Chantel, we're on the board. But we sponsor, or we help the libraries raise money for some key programs. The summer reading program, tutor.com, reading challenges, and tutoring services for adults and children, families. Because contrary to what many may believe, it's not just children who can't read. And it is a beautiful thing when people realize literacy, that books are for everybody. And what's beautiful even further is that though some people would like to ban books, we say not here. Not here. I believe we should all be able to choose which books we will peruse. That's good. Write that down. Write that down. There's so much. Yes.
You know, Dr. Bryce, you brought up something that I think is very critical. And I think what you were more or less saying, how you're raised will determine your foundation, right? And I get to say this because my mom is here.
I'll take that.
Who's very much so about literacy. Like, there were a lot of rules that kids don't have rules now. And the rules and the expectations were that you earn the things that make you happy. You get to be excited and celebrate, right? So we didn't watch TV during the week. I mean, we would sneak, turn on TV before she gets home. And interestingly enough, Miss Jerry, my mom worked at Naval as well. That is very interesting. But, you know, I guess the point of what I'm pointing to is that you have options, right? And one of the lessons that I introduce my program, especially when there's a mixed room of boys and girls, I always say that you always have a choice. This society, how everything is set up and how everything is led, it's almost as if the schools have no power of making sure that the kids are matriculating. So they're like, well, doesn't seem like the parents care, kids don't care, nothing we can do. We just want them to show up so we can continue to get our money. That's how it feels. And that could just be me and my interpretation, but it doesn't seem like the efforts are going out. Because while we're up here, there's no representation from the school board or teachers or principals who are actively making those statements. So that's why I say that. And so if that is true, and these are the people who are responsible for taking on the role where many of the kids have superseded where their parents' education are. So they're literally leaning on the education system to fill in the gaps for them. You know, we're creating programs that have books, find out the kids can't read, so we do programs help you read. But, you know, it's really their ability to make a decision, that's what they want to do. That's us saying like, hey, you should really read. Education is going to open up these doors for you and open up your mind to begin to start moving around those thoughts that you have, and maybe promote you to take action in some form. That's still us, right? So when talking to kids, I've developed this concept of the 5/95. Because of every system, if we're looking at education being one, well, if they don't learn how to read by 3rd grade, the pipeline is to prison. They can't get into a point even now if they make it through 12th grade that not even Amazon wants them. That was shown last year, right? Why doesn't Amazon want them? Well, you have to be able to read to package boxes. And we're all to a point where we have the expectation, to a point where almost we can order something right now and get it tomorrow. We have an expectation that it gets there tomorrow. And when it doesn't, or we get the wrong thing, then we have problems. That makes problems for Amazon. They have problems with that. Okay, so when we go back to the 5 to 95, what I have observed, and again, this could just be me, but based on facts and data, I think it's true. So the 5 spaces that they're okay with kids going right now, they're okay with them going to college as long as it's going into something that is going to benefit the economy. So entertainment, sports, they're okay with that. They're okay with you actually going into a career of something that's going to feed in back into the economy. So typically that's entertainment and sports as well, because they can sell concerts, they can build big businesses, and they can have people come in and consume, right? Military, well, they need someone to fight their wars. And you don't actually have to read for that anymore. Same thing is true of going into prison, which I look at prison and military in the same fashion because they're both serving a purpose for a larger entity or institution, right? If you go to prison, they don't have to pay you the salary that they would if you were outside. They've chosen it for you. Same thing is true in the military. And so those are those 4. And then the last one is a coffin. Well, you're taking up space. You're not, serving the economy. You're not putting nothing in. You're just taking up space and money away from here. So we're okay with you going. Those are the 5 choices that no one has to work for. They can stop going to school today, and those are their 5 options. And so when put like that, that normally hits them where it really makes sense for them in the moment. Speaking plain English, those are your 5 choices. You don't have to do anything today. I'm encouraging you to just make one decision differently every day to lead to these other 95 possibilities in your life. Just try. 30 seconds every day. If you have trouble reading, try reading 30 seconds, 30 minutes, and build your way up. Because we are dealing with loss learner mitigations. We already see that in the federal government. We can read it. Loss learner mitigations is a term. It's the reason why we have after-school programs. There's $435 billion for after-school programs, but not enough after-school programs to serve the need. And so when we're looking at this being the case, it's like we ourselves too as adults have our 5 to 95 opportunity to make a decision too. We can let those 5 options be the reality of them, or we can do one thing to make a difference and create 95 other possibilities.
Yeah, I'd like to follow up on that. I've got 2 men in my life that led me basically to where I'm right now. The first is my father. My father was born in Santa Barbara in 1927. By the time he was old enough to pick fruit, that's what he did for the family. My grandmother had 23 children. 11 survived in California. So him and his older brother came up to Vallejo to work at Mare Island in late 1939, 1940 there. And my dad worked at Mare Island for a summer job to bring money in to the family down in Santa Barbara. And he would move welding hoses, he would do whatever in the base in order to help the crews. So one lady saw him And he'd always move her welding hoses for her, and always did this and always did that. And the end of summer, he says, I gotta go back to Santa Barbara now. It's time to go pick fruit down in Southern California. She goes, wait a minute. She says, you can go to school and you can earn money for your family. You can become an apprentice. So he became an apprentice because of her. She wrote the letter, got him in the apprenticeship program in Mare Island. He trained in the apprenticeship program to be a draftsman and a machinist. Those are the two things that he was doing good at. World War II comes. He goes off and fights in World War II in the Pacific. While he was there, because he knew drafting, he designed a city in the Philippines. He stopped a bulldozer from running over a 500-pound unexploded bomb and saved countless lives. He was promoted in the field. Came back to Mare Island, picked up where he left off. In that time, now my dad was up here at a very young age as a teenager. He had to learn English. So he went to Vallejo High. He graduated Vallejo Junior College. He went to Berkeley and became a nuclear engineer. He was at Mare Island 42 years, 7 months, and 38 days. Or 36, 35 days, something like that, when they figured everything out. He had 7 years of sick leave he could take when he retired. Okay?
Exactly.
That was my father. He's my inspiration for everything I do. Because he used education to move ahead. My Uncle Ray was his younger brother. My Uncle Ray, my Uncle George, another Dio had a men's clothing store in Santa Barbara. One of the most fancy men's clothing stores. Every entertainer from the Oak Ridge Boys to Muhammad Ali and whoever would come in and get their clothes from them on State Street. Uncle Ray was the bookkeeper. He looked at me when I was a young child. He says, Neil, he says, understand this. You start becoming a bookkeeper and you know all the numbers of a business, you're more valuable than the owner.
Yeah.
Because you know where all the money goes. Took that advice. Took my dad's education advice. Had great mentors here in Vallejo. I got to see what education can do. Yes, I'm ex-military. I'm proud Army veteran. I worked, like I said, I worked at Naval in the accounting department. I was the only male in the accounting department at the time, which was interesting. But education. These kids have lost 4 years of their lives. My granddaughter lost 4 years in school. She's a product of Stephen Manor. We now live in Fairfield. We kept her education going, and I'm glad we did, because she's ahead in a lot of different areas. But without this education, and without education, you don't have freedom. You do not have the chance to move forward. You don't have opportunities. And I don't care if you're what nationality you are, I don't care how you identify, you have to have the education. These women here, they're advocating for that. You need to advocate for that. We need to get down to school board representatives and say what the hell's going on. I've seen this. When I graduated Hogan High in 1979, I was the very first male dean's assistant in the school's history. Because in the 11th grade, I missed 100 of 179 days of school. So every day for my senior year, they made sure I was their first period to be the dean's assistant. It took somebody to say, hey, wait a minute, we're losing you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
it really does.
That's the important thing. We need to pay attention to these kids. We can't let them sit here and play on their phones, play on their little iPads and whatever else, and not pay attention to them.
As we wrap up, I am going to, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think we had some interesting threads that we all kept pulling at, right? When we got back, when we all looked at this, every single one of you is trying to educate people in some way, right? And each one of you is trying to get out to the community, especially with the youth. And you know, you've all talked about great programs and great things that you work with and all this amazing stuff. But it is Women's History Month. Y'all are the ladies representing for us, and so I would like if we could all, and this can be everybody in the room, if we can all just take a moment, we'll only ask the panelists, but if everybody in the room can just take one moment and think about who maybe the most influential woman in their life is, and just give a nice silent moment to thank them, and then we're going to go ahead and ask our panelists who that woman is for them. Then we'll have Dr. Bryce end with a lovely poem, and then we'll all get to go home. Yeah? I already forgot what I was going to do first, guys. Are you guys all thinking? You're all taking a moment? But okay, I'm gonna talk to you guys like when I work with kindergartners. Once you have that woman, that special woman in your life, if you give me a thumbs up, it's a silent signal to know that we've all sat and thought, okay, oh, they were so quick with it. This is something they've thought about before. Okay, we're gonna start with Ms. Jerry Ann and work our way down to Dr. Bryce.
For me, technically it's two. One is my grandmother on my mother's side, Marguerite Ewald. She had a 3rd grade education, and she could manage money so well. She worked at the Leverage department store. She taught me counting by playing bingo with me when I was a young child. The other person is my grandmother on my dad's side, who rode with Pancho Villa. And she is the one who gave me the tenacity to do what I'm doing right now.
I have pretty much the same. My mother taught me how to read before I went to school, and that's been a tradition on both sides of my family. And people undervalue kids when they think they have to wait until they're in school. And you know, it occurred to me listening to other people talk, maybe there should be like how to teach your kids to read course for adults, because that saved me just so much trouble. Even when I was disturbed about stuff and didn't go to school, you know, you can catch up if you can read a book, if you enjoy reading. Anyway, my father a little bit, but mostly my mother taught me to read, you know, starting when I was like 3. That's been a tradition. Also, on my father's side, my grandmother left her home and was teaching a 1-room schoolhouse in, I think, North Dakota when she was 16. Just, you know, determined. When she went to college later on, the women had to go in by the back door. They weren't allowed in the front door. And they had a game where one of them would walk up to the security guard and try to distract him, flirt with him a little bit, and the other women would run past him and run in the front door. So, yeah, I'm lucky to have people like that in my background that have helped me to become independent and literate, and to let me know that being a woman doesn't mean that I can't do all these things. So.
Well, for me, it really resonated with what a lot of you guys said when you talked about having a home that, education was so important. Just like your mom's here, my mom is here to support me. She made sure I read before I entered school because it was such an important foundational skill. So my mother has always been a huge, huge supporter, a huge driver, a huge person that expected greatness from a young age, expected you to be polite, expected you to be respectful, stand up for yourself, stand up for others. And so I just had a really great foundation. Thank you.
So I actually have two as well. They kind of work together almost. So my grandmother, Ruth Brumfield, she was the mother of 13. She moved here from Jim Crow South from Louisiana. Came here because of the shipyard. So my grandfather came first, and she came actually pregnant with one baby, and she had to work her way on the train to get here, because during the time you had to be married to travel as a woman. So there were soldiers on the train, so she pretended one of them was her husband, and like, this is our kids. And so she got here. When she got here, she wasn't, high school educated. She had been taking care of family. There was a boarding home that was once a plantation and turned into a boarding home for soldiers. And so when she came here, she had always knew how to cook. And so she started a restaurant that ended up being on Muir Island, that ended up being on Broadway. It was Virginia's Kitchen. But I guess for me, growing up and watching her in the different businesses that she had, she would always say it's always about survival and make sure you get educated. And so the next is my mother, who my grandmother gave my mother Hooked on Phonics. Not that I couldn't read, but it was the indication that you never stop learning and you always must be sharp. And so doing Hooked on Phonics and, doing different programs. So actually Victoria and her sister Janita, we were in ballet together. And looking at your family, you had a restaurant, we could go there, it was something that we see. And my mother always was finding different programs to put me in, because of course she didn't want me to watch TV. But to read and just open up new doors, because how do you tell a child to explore more without introducing them to things? So being a part of Diane's ballet school, doing the Nutcracker, we are lucky being here in Vallejo because it's such a cultural bull base of different things that we're just introduced to. It's not like we have to go and spend a whole lot of money to go find it. It's right here. And being able to make friends with different folks, Maria and I were in drama classes. She's always been dramatic as she is now. In drama, and we would explore like literary creations. And I mean, we did Pillow Talk. Remember that?
Yeah.
Okay,
I was Doris today.
But my point is that my mom and my dad, actually, the two of them together, I would say that my mom definitely taught me my position as a woman. My dad taught me how to really fight for and be a voice and not back down, and use my voice as my fist to fight in every space and create the space that wasn't there. So I've never walked in a room that I didn't feel comfortable in, even though we know historically that there is discrimination, there's racism and everything that goes along with it. But as a quote that I love so much, no one has the right to make you feel inferior unless you give them the right to do so. And I've never given anybody that right. And I thank my mother, of course, for just being the one who never said no. It's always like, okay, we can explore this. Because I've always been the creative idea one who's been, like, oh, we're gonna move here, we're gonna do this, and everything was a butterfly. But it all worked together because I never, until this day, have a resistance or restricted to say that I can't, because it never came from the person who raised me.
There's a lot of influence in my life.
And beauty.
Some of them are in here. But probably the biggest one would be the one sitting over there. to ride a bike. But yeah, when I was younger and I used to try and do theater and stuff, people would be like, oh no, you can't do that. You can't play that role. You're a girl. You're too young. She started her own theater company with me, and me and her made a free youth group for kids. And yeah, I just do everything with you. I learned everything from you.
Echoing the sentiments of many on the panel, my mother, key factor in my life, my maternal grandmother, was from Griffin, Georgia, and they came out to Vallejo, she and her brothers and sisters, as a matter of fact, and they all found work, Mare Island Shipyard, that great migration from the South to California, and they brought a lot with them that I gleaned from them subsequently, chief of which is education. Get it, get it. We had to go to public school, so it was free, so get it, go. And that has been just a hallmark of my life. But also outside of my family, there have been great influences like Maya Angelou and Sonia Sanchez and poets who just shared from their own experience. So lots and lots, I could go on and on and on. But I'm not sure, Maria, should I go right into the poem or should I stop after that? I don't know.
Well, I'll go ahead and tell them who inspires me.
Yes, because I don't want to do too much.
She's a liar. She loves to do too much.
That's
she said honesty was our premier goal for today. I would also like to, of course, give a shout out to my mother. We have an odd relationship, but that woman is tenacious and people don't have the nerve to tell me no, and I'm pretty sure that's comes from her, because they know I'll just keep bugging, right? Like Victoria, like, yeah, book fest is coming up. Like, yes, I will be dogmatic. I think that I was lucky enough to be surrounded by really strong women. My mother-in-law, who I was lucky enough to have as my own mom for 26 years. My ex-boyfriend, who's now my husband, we've been together for 26 years. So his mom was like, a lifelong kindergarten teacher. You're a teacher. You should come into my classroom. I'm like, excuse me, I don't want to be with no kids. Keep them kids away from me. Now my life is just kids because she saw something in me. You know, some of my teachers at Hogan. I mean, my goodness, Gretchen. Chantel, Dr. Bryce, there's many, Linda Howard, there's many women in this community that when they see you fall or they realize you don't have a mom, guess what? You do. You have mothers, you have sisters, you have cousins, you have, I mean, I call Uncle Mel, Uncle Mel. I mean, we all have a community here and of really strong, powerful women. And I think that we all leave little handprints on each other's lives, whether it's Dr. Bryce being like, but you love literacy, be on the board with me. Or, you know, Chantel being like, we gotta do this great thing for kids, where's the community center, we can do it. Or Victoria being like, no, Maria, we're gonna do all the events this year. You know, it is one of those things. And so I think that we're very lucky, and I think that this community of women is very blessed to have each other to kind of tell each other how we can help and what to do in life. So without further delay, let's end this on a high note. Hopefully Dr. Bryce has something beautiful, uplifting, no pressure.
Right, okay.
Stand up, take the moment.
She doesn't need it.
Take the moment. She don't need it, but she gonna take it.
Okay. So in preparation for tonight, I wasn't sure exactly which poem to share, but I've been blessed to work with some wonderful organizations, Soroptimist International, Emerge California, the Solano Coalition, or excuse me, the Solano Commission on Women and Girls, and I was one of the speakers one year for the Solano County Women's History Month luncheon. And it was during the time of great political unrest when there was a certain woman who kept talking when somebody else wanted her to stop. So you all may, without being overly political tonight. She just would not take no for it. She wouldn't stop talking. And the thing was, nevertheless, she persisted. You all remember? Okay. So from that theme, I created the poem. This was 2018. And so I give you It's High Time. Why, you seemed surprised because you closed your eyes and blinked and thought that she would shrink back at the enormity of the task. Shame on you, because you didn't know who you were dealing with and didn't bother to ask. Who is she? Well, I'll tell you who she ain't. A timid, sad, skittish wallflower, shy and voiceless. Some trepidatious, inferior one, invisible and choiceless. You've got her mistaken for someone who would simply sit back and allow you to speak for her. Oh, not true. It's high time. It's our time. You're amazed that she would persist, and just what else would you have her to do? For when babies needed feeding, she fed them, breasts at the ready. When books needed reading, she read them, hands strong and steady. And when lives needed leading, she led them. Yes, even from the back of the bus. For some do what they should, others do what they must. It's high time. It's our time. From the oppressive heat of an Alabama sun to the oppressive present-day practices that only prosper some, we will walk till we march, march till we run, and run till we win. Seats at the table of authority. Seats if meant for you were also meant for me. It's high time. It's our time. And just what did you expect her to do? We will knock on doors till our knuckles are sore, chant and move like our sisters before. We ask neither for permission nor advice. We are no longer interested in playing nice, flexing our power at this our finest hour. Why? Because it's high time. It's our time. Thank you.